This episode of the 2016 Skyrim Modding Guide is focused on water mods. We'll discuss and install Water from the Ruffled Feather, Realistic Water 2, and the Pure Water series. I'll then conclude with a way to get the water effects from Purity working with vivid weathers. Hey guys, it's Cal from Dirty Weasel. Welcome back to the 2016 Skyrim Modding Guide. As the introduction mentioned, we're going to be talking about water, and it basically gets down to three choices. And in this video, I'll be talking about Water by Sparrow Prince that's contained in his mod, the Ruffled Feather. We'll also be looking at Realistic Water 2, and finally the Pure series, basically Pure Waters, Pure Waterfalls, and Purity. And we'll get into that Purity issue on, I know it's a weather mod, but we'll get into that when we get to that section. So the first mod we're going to be looking at today is essentially the Ruffled Feather. And it is the Ruffled Feather mod collection by Sparrow Prince. It's mod number 13268. And it contains water. And water is basically, an older mod that's been around for a while. But Sparrow Prince went ahead and put it into the Ruffled Feather. And the Ruffled Feather has a lot of different stuff together because it's a combination mod. It has a foam mod, and you can choose what components you want to have. So we're going to talk about, basically the water. And you can see in this section right here, it talks about all the different water types have been remade with new water textures and improved files. There are still a few things that you need to know about this. There are optional plants. It has lily pads, frog spawns, that sort of thing on it. It is compatible with SMIM, and you should be able to go ahead and overwrite it with this mod, and if you want the animated blacksmith trowels and better looking rocks. So that's one thing to talk about right there. Also, kind of in the water related aspect, you also have the Argonian Access and Riften. I'll show you that when we get to the foam mod. I'll show you a little clip of that. Better dynamic snow, that's not water related, but it's just frozen water, right? Frozen water. So you can read about that. Decrease those plants, another good performance improving mod. Fix the city for Whiterun. It basically talks about the mesh bugs that were never fixed in Whiterun. Hairy furry pelts, that's not really water at all. Just ice, which basically improves the look of the ice in game. Kind of looks pretty good. Moss rocks, that's not really water related. Red mountain plume, not water related. Smoking hot load effects, it's basically a load screen issue. Terrain bump, which is actually quite nice, but it's not water related, but I wanted to, talk about it real briefly. It's mainly for vanilla textures that can be used with other replacers. This will be something we will be using when I get to texture mods later on, but I wanted to, point this out to you that it's contained in the Ruffled Feather. Souped up stall rim, optionally stall rim. Includes better meshes for, previous versions, so you got that. Vanilla females, we're not using vanilla females, but if you are, there's a fix for that as well. Auroras and enhanced distant terrain. So there's a lot contained in this that you may find very useful, or in some cases actually improve your performance. So that's a good thing to have. And the Ruffled Feather is by Sparrow Prince, and it is a great collection of mods from a great modder who does some good work. And I think that it's worth checking out. So let's go into the files and we'll take a look at what you need. You have the main files, the Ruffled Feather version 4.2.2. It was updated recently in March of 2016. So you can see some minor changes in the changelog if you want to know about that versus previous versions. We talked about the enhanced distant terrain. It is an older mod, but it has now been broken out into its own thing. Of course, if you want to change the sweet rolls into donuts, you can get that as well. But anyways, we're mainly talking about the Ruffled Feather. So download that with Manager. We'll take a look at it in Mod Organizer. So there it is right there. You can go ahead and double click and it's going to open a foam mod. It's a fairly big one because it contains so many different things. So we'll just open up the foam mod so we can take a look at it completely here. And you can see, the first thing you're going to look at is a custom install or installation for the step guide. Only use this if you're using step. Okay, we're using custom. So we'll go ahead and click next on that. If you want to have the water mod, which is what this video is all about, is water. So yes, install water. But if you don't want to use this water with all the other goodies that the Ruffled Feather has in it, you can go ahead and click that. But we want the water. That's what we're here to talk about. Do you or will you have SMIM installed? Yes, I will have SMIM installed, even though it's not presently installed in my load order. Yes, we will want to have that. So we're going to click yes on SMIM installed. And then it gets down to the actual components of water here. And you can see the core files, we need that. The DLC options, and this is very important to read all this stuff right here. And you can see that you have Skyrim only, Dawnguard, or Dragonborn, or Legendary. It's already detected that I have the Legendary, so it went ahead and selected that for me. If you have Falscar, you can go ahead and read that. Read the warning. Falscar ESM is required or your game will crash. Well, it kind of figures anyways, right? It's going to use it as a master, so if you install this and you don't have Falscar, it will crash because it's a required master. If you're using realistic needs and diseases, you can have that. I do not have that, and I don't plan on having realistic needs and diseases. But we'll talk about that more in depth as we get to that part of it. And then, of course, realistic needs and diseases with Falscar. If you have that, you can go and click that. So that's basically that first panel. So go ahead and click next. This is the vanilla female's booty band-aid. Basically it's for a gap between the legs, thighs, and behind. And you can go ahead and click that if you're using something like the vanilla and you're not using anything like UNP or CMMB or whatever. Anyways, go ahead and click next. Water optional features. If you want the water plants, and those will basically like lily pads, more reeds around the lakes. I'm not really sure this is needed for me because I'm using enhanced landscapes, which already include reeds that look quite nice. I think this is probably not a great option to use. It will include it. I noticed in one of the pictures, one of the screenshots of the footage I did, it did include different ones. So you will have two different types of reeds, which kind of make it look a little odd. But it does have, water pads, lily pads, that sort of thing. And then a Crab-a-Lot companion. A companion. That's Crab-a-Lot. Okay, anyways, moving on. Argonian Access. This is the Argonian Access, and I'll show you a little clip right here. As you swim in or out of Riften through one of the two canals, it will go ahead and allow a little opening there, and you can pass through, and you have a little loading screen, and then you're suddenly in Riften, which is kind of nice. So it's something to think about. I decided I did not want this, but I tested it anyways, and you saw that footage. Decide if you want it or not. Go and click next. These are the better snow files. I think these are quite nice. I'm not going to install them right now because I don't want to have, any interactions not having SMIM. So I'm going to go ahead and click none on this, but the better dynamic snow is a feature of the Ruffled Feather. I think it looks quite good. And better dynamic snow, if you want to go ahead and get that as well, you can go ahead and click the Dragonborn and Dawnguard Legendary Edition right there. But I don't want to have it just yet. I may come back and redo this at a later time. All right, so on this basically, by the way, if you want to go ahead and read the notes on this, SMIM users should overwrite BDS files, basically better dynamic snow. So here's the issue with this is sometimes you may have something that SMIM needs to overwrite, and sometimes this may need to overwrite SMIM. So just keep that in mind. You're going to have issues with load order on this, but it's something to think about. We're going to click next. We're focusing only on water, right? Right. Next. Decrease those plants. This is a great thing that actually will improve your performance. So, even if you have the Skyrim floor overhaul, I think this will, improve things. So basically, since we have it, we'll talk about it. Select this option if you have Vert's Skyrim floor overhaul installed. This will replace some grass meshes included with Skyrim floor overhaul with meshes that have been optimized for better performance. Both decrease those plants and decrease those plants Skyrim floor overhaul options will work independent from another for best performance gain with FFO installed. Select both options. So basically it's talking about the grasses. It will decrease other plants that are added by Skyrim floor overhaul, but because I use enhanced landscapes and it has its own grass component, so just keep that in mind. Enhanced landscapes, you can see it right there. It's the merge file right there. Since I have this, it's doing its own grass. It's overriding Skyrim floor overhaul, which is right there. So just keep that in mind that, it may say decrease those plants, but basically we're talking about primarily grasses overall. So just keep that in mind. It'll still decrease some plants, but not all, mostly grasses. And then finally, lush trees fills out the tree meshes so they look fuller and more lush. Skyrim performance overhaul or Skyrim floor overhaul it doesn't really work with that. So, make your choices of that, but just be informed. Click next. Furry pelts, not really water related at all. but you can read it and select it if you like. And next, Just Ice. Originally a water optional, it now sits here as its own mod. Transforms the glacier ice texture into sparkling, fantasy-like ice cold walls. Has 2K main texture and a 1K normal map with parallax texture. It looks good. I got some footage right here, a little brighter, a little bigger for you. And it looks quite nice. It's very, very blue. All sort of blue. But it is sparkly and pretty, and it looks really good with the water. So just so you know, that's what you're getting. And you can go and select that. I'm going to go ahead and leave it off right now until I make a final decision. Click Next. Moss Rocks, if you want to have mossy looking rocks, you can go ahead and select those. Or Moss Rocks Legendary Edition, and then you don't have to select these, you just collect Legendary. So just to be aware, this version contains the static mesh improvement mod meshes were available by default. So it's going to be putting new textures over the rocks, meshes that were improved by static mesh improvement mod. So you have your choices there as well. And next, the smoking hot load effects, you can see it basically adds flames to the main menu. Okay, whatever. Click Next. Terrain Bump, I think this looks really good. Built mainly for people running vanilla landscape textures, this mod can be used, although not perfectly, with other texture packs to save memory. Okay, the mod increases the depth effect of nearly all vanilla textures, making them look more 3D. It will work with most of the main texture mods, and it looks quite good. If you want to go ahead and select that, you can. I'm going to leave it off for right now since we're focusing on water. Go ahead and click Next. Better auroras, brighter auroras. We're using Vivid Weathers, which actually improves the auroras quite nicely. I don't think you need to do this. Go ahead and click Next. Fix a City provides mesh fixes not covered yet by SMIM or USKP. Essentially, you sleep, you have to go through and you'd have to look at the actual ones that are covered by this. Probably this is a typo. It probably is for you sleep, but it's basically unofficial Skyrim patch is what he mentioned. But if you went ahead and ran it through TES5 edit, it would tell you which ones are overriding or if there are any conflicts. So just use this with caution. It does include a readme of all for a list of all fixes on included meshes. So I'm going to leave this off for right now. Fix the city textures, default grass, green grass. Okay? Basically just an option. So you can go ahead and choose what you want on that. And click Next. Stall rim, if you want better looking stall rim type ore and whatever else, you can go ahead and select one of these. I'm going to leave it off for now. And click Next. Red Mountain, I don't really care. And install. And go ahead and activate it. Now, what I found is basically, I like having all these up above Vivid Weathers. I found that there wasn't any big reason not to have it this way. You can see it's going to be overriding a few things on the conflict section. You can see it's basically the high-res pack, Dragonborn, and the Legendary Edition patch. You can see it's basically the wet rocks that they're changing in the Blacksmith Forge markers. So it actually will change the water inside of the water troughs for the blacksmith. So just be aware that's what it's doing. As far as plugins go on this, you come down and you can see Water, Dawnguard plus Dragonborn. I would go ahead and let Loot do its thing. You can see it moved it up a little bit. What I found is that I can go ahead and move it basically all the way up here, above Enhanced Landscapes or anywhere else that I really wanted to try and move it around to. So, it's basically your choice. Let Loot figure it out for itself. But that's kind of how I test things, is I move them up and then I go ahead and see what Loot says about it. Because sometimes Loot just kind of doesn't follow through all the way. See, it wanted it back down, but it was higher up. It's higher up now than it was before. So it's telling you, yeah, we moved it up here to where it worked. I want to move it up a little bit more. Nope, you can't have it there. You got to have it here. That's how I do things, is I see where it wants to put it first, and then I'll move it way up high and then see how far it drops it down. And then that will decide for me on how far I want to move things. So it's pretty close to Vivid Weathers. So I think this is a good choice. If you wanted to be, really picky about it, you can move it down even farther right there, okay? So that's something to take a look at. So let's talk about water in general as a mod and how it looks. I really like the way the water looks in water. The Clarity is about right for me. It is not too clear. It's not nearly as murky as the original water. The fish, when you look out on the ocean or a big lake, you don't see the fish really as clearly as you do on some of the other ones, and it kind of looks a little weird, quite frankly, on some of the other ones. But the clarity is good. The water surface looks quite nice. I think it is the right mix between agitation and stillness. The reflection's not overly done, and it looks very, very natural. The clarity near the shore is good enough, and it has a very nice texture. When you look at the direction of the water, it's quite nice. It makes sense when you look at the way the water flows down different streams. It actually looks very well balanced. Waterfalls are not that much different than what you'll see in the vanilla textures, but it looks good enough. It looks better overall. I think it looks, well enough for me anyways, my untrained eye. As far as the oceans go, I think that the amount of agitation in the ocean is approximately what I would expect to see in a real ocean. It's not perfectly still. I think that other mods, the water looks way too still in the ocean. It's supposed to be very choppy and kind of, have a lot of undulation to it and move about. There is a wave effect that's been added by Sparrow Prince, and it is quite good. I think it's a lot less than what Realistic Water 2 does, but it's there and it's not overly done. So I think it looks very well balanced. Overall, I really do like some of the features that Water presents, and as a total package, it's quite good when you include all the other stuff that the Ruffled Feather has in it. So it's something to keep in mind. It's an option for, consideration when you compare it to the other ones. And, I like it overall. I think it's a very, very good option if you want this look. All right, so now we're going to talk about Realistic Water 2 by Isoku. And we're going to start with a little history lesson. In the beginning, there was Realistic Water 1 by Isoku, and it was good. It was very good. It definitely improved the texture of the water, the way it appeared. And then Isoku kind of left it off at that, and then Sparrow Prince picked it up, and hence Water was born, W.A.T.E.R, his mod that we just covered in this video. And he's made improvements over time for his own version of the mod. Isoku came back and decided he wanted to create Realistic Water 2. And that's what we're going to be covering right now. And he made changes that are distinct from Water, W.A.T.E.R, that I think are definitely an improvement over the overall base of mod he did. So at least know about the history. As far as Realistic Water goes too, the mod itself, I've never used it before, but I wanted to do my research and I kind of started talking to people and I looked up stuff. And it seems to be very, very popular with the step crowd. It's now part of the step guide. And it's also pretty much the go-to water mod for ENB users because of, certain add-ons and optionals that you can add to Realistic Water 2 to make it look even better using an ENB. And I gotta admit, after playing around with it for a little bit using an ENB, or a couple different ENBs actually, it is quite nice, and it's probably a better choice than Water, W.A.T.E.R, would be for, ENB users. So it's just something to keep in mind. And we're going to go look at that on the net right now. And you can see it is there right now. And Realistic Water 2 by Isoku, mod number 41076. And you can see it was done in 2013. And, it's very, very popular. And the latest version is 1.11. And it hasn't been updated a whole lot since August of 2013. So the actual version you're seeing here is pretty much the version that you're going to get that has been around for a long time. So one of the things that version 1 has is Bobbing Ice preview and the version Water preview, all some of the stuff. Let's just talk about some of the changes. You can read those right here. Compatibility. All plugins must be placed after any mod that modifies a cell near body of water. He recommends that you place it very low in your mod list, but one of the things that most mod authors do, they always want their mod at the bottom. So it does have compatibility for realistic needs and diseases. It has mesh improvements from SMIM and the Skyrim particle surface scattering patch. So it's all in there. You don't have to worry about that. Water surface and Dragonborn wave support for Dawnguard, Dragonborn, Worm's Turf, and Fallscar are provided. We'll go over that in the foam mod. You see the overhaul here. You can go ahead and read all these, changes that he's made from the vanilla game. Water audio. I want to point this out to you. A lot of the, water effects in the game using Realistic Water 2 are much louder and they are very much different. So, that's one of the things you'll notice when walking around. The water does sound very much different. I think that's something that, you need to be aware of. There is a patch within Audio Overhaul Skyrim 2 that will, have a patcher for Realistic Water 2. So you can go ahead and just be aware of those. Bobbing objects, bobbing boats, and bobbing icebergs. That's just something that we'll cover, and I'll show you a little bit of that, not much there. There is a wave component to this. The waves are different than the water, W.A.T.E.R, and they are in different places. So you won't have the same, areas covered by the water effect. It is, foam, rain ripples, that sort of thing. Performance, complete script-free mod. If you want to see, there's no special installs. So let's go ahead and take a look at the, some of the other little things. Cell edits you can see around Riften inside the lock issue that they have right here. So you can open this gate, whatever else. So you have choppy water on the outside, stagnant water within, but there is no gate like you would have for water. So you can see those are one of the differences. You can go through some of the other pictures if you want to look at that. Well, let's look at the files. Realistic Water 2, you're going to need this main file right here. It contains high, medium, and low resolution set and all the optionals. We'll go over that in the FOMod. Mod. Download that with Manager. And then for you ENB users, I would suggest getting Realistic Water 2, the ENB textures. It basically says install them and then overwrite the main files. Go ahead and download that with Manager if you're an ENB users. And there's this optional plugin courtesy of Pagan Metal Fan. And you can see it right here. It's called Water for ENB and Realistic Water 2. I'll come back to that in a second. So, like I said, base file, Realistic Water 2, ENB textures, download that with Manager if you're using ENB. Now, let's go over and take a look at Watercolor for ENB and Realistic Water 2 by Pagan Metal Fan. It is mod number 48938. And you can see basically it's a simple plugin to change the color of the water, making sun scattering effects and ENB series more visible. Okay, you can see with sun scattering, without sun scattering, and it just makes the water look more like water, I guess. So you just download the mod. I'll show you that real fast, but basically, and this is Watercolor for ENB and Realistic Water 2. Obviously, it requires Realistic Water 2 because it will have it as a required master. And if you're using Realistic Needs and Diseases compatible version, you would need this one right here that doesn't need the main file right here. All right, we'll download this if you're using Realistic Needs and Diseases. I will not and won't be doing that. And ENB settings for water and underwater, so you can just read these references. So if you're going to be using Realistic Water 2 with the ENB stuff, go ahead and get Watercolor for ENB and Realistic Water 2. Download that with Manager. So let's go over to Mod Organizer. We will install it. You can see right here on the very top, I have Realistic Water 2. We'll go ahead and double click to install. It's going to open up a FOMod. And you're going to see these are the resolution ones. Let's open this up a little bit more so you can see it a little better. And you have high, medium, and low. Of course, high is 1024 by 1024. Medium is 512 by 512. And low is 256 by 256, which is the original resolution for Skyrim Water. I did all my testing on 512 by 512. It probably doesn't affect performance that much, or as far as the, what you're seeing on screen. But if you want to try the high and see what your frame rate is, you can try that. I'm going to leave it at medium. Compatibility is Realistic Needs or default. We're just going to leave it at default right now, since I don't plan on having Realistic Needs and Diseases in the future. We'll leave that at default, but it's up to you. Click Next. Now this is where it gets a little funky, and I think that the instructions could have been a little better written by Asoku as far as this goes. If you have the Legendary Edition, you would want to go ahead and click that. In the New Land section, if you do have Legendary Edition, do not select the Dawnguard Dragonborn editions. Same thing goes on the Waves. Do not select the Skyrim Dragonborn Dawnguard editions. I repeat, if you collect Legendary, do not select any of the Dawnguard Dragonborn, Skyrim Dawnguard Dragonborn in sections 4 or 5. You can still go ahead and click Worm's Tooth and Fallscar if you have those in each of these sections, and you'll get the Waves and the New Lands waters, okay? You come down to 6, so you can actually add more stuff here. So bobbing longboats, I'll show you a little picture of that right there. Bobbing longboats will go ahead and kind of add a swaying motion to your longboats. It's a nice effect. You do get some clipping with the items on the deck of each of the boats, but it's not overly bad. I think it looks good overall. I'm going to select that. Performance waterfalls, splash water effects will fade out at a long distance, but fade back in when up close. I think that, most of the time your graphics cards nowadays can handle this just fine. I'm going to go ahead and leave that unticked. Optional ambiance, basically it changes the lake and ocean sound loops from 30 seconds to 50 seconds. It really depends on you. If you think the sound effects for each of those areas are too short and you want them a little bit longer, you would click extended ambiance. And of course, static ice. The bobbing icebergs are right here. You can see the picture of that. It's an interesting effect. It's not complete throughout, but it does look good. If you do not like that bob effect, you would go ahead and click static ice and they'll stay stationary. It's up to you. I didn't see a big performance hit, but just remember it's more moving objects on a screen and you may not like it. Some people think that it's kind of just looks a little fake, and I would kind of agree with that, argument looking at it from a certain perspective, but that's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and leave it static because I think it's too distracting having the iceberg bob. That's just my personal thing. Go ahead and install it. Now I can go ahead and activate it. And you can see it's going to be making some overwrites. You have optional ESPs. We'll just take a look at those two of them to keep an eye on. And then the overwrites. You can see we're basically overwriting Dragonborn, the official Skyrim Legendary Edition patch, and the unmanaged Dragonborn. Okay, that's not bad. Even though I know we're making some overwrites, it's not a big deal to the Legendary Edition patch. So go ahead and close that. You can see also, by the way, it does have sound files. So if you want to know those, you can have that. Go ahead and close that. And when you come over to your plugins, you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to have Realistic Water 2 Legendary and the Realistic Water 2 ESP. Those are both correct. You notice you don't have anything extra here. It's just the two. If you have a Legendary Edition, that's all you got. If you had ones for Ballscar and Worm's Tooth, they would be down here as well. So we're going to let loot do its thing, and we'll take a look and see what it does. And you can see where to go. There's Realistic Water 2, and then you should have Realistic Water 2 Legendary. And you can see under Enabled Masters, it requires Realistic Water 2.esp to be above it, and that's how it is. Now, I played around with it, and I went ahead and moved it up where I had the other waters, which was right around Vivid Waters up there. We're going to try and move these again and see what happens, just like we did with W.A.T.E.R, and see what we get. Yep, moved them back down. So the Master ESP is fine above there, but it really wants to be, the Legendary Edition wants to be down here. Whatever that does is fine. I'm fine with that. So it kind of gives you an idea. So let's go back to our downloads and we will talk about the Realistic Water 2 E and B textures. Now on this, double click to install, and you're going to have the E and B versions, Ultra, High, Medium, and Low. I think the Ultra version is going to kill your frame rate, but that's up to you. If you want to try it out, that's up to you. High, and then Medium. We're going to go ahead and click High on this. Since you're using E and B, you might as well try it. It's just for realistic sake, so you're just going to see what you got, and you're going to go ahead and click install, and it's going to ask you to merge those in because we were replacing the textures for that and adding some new E and B stuff. So go ahead and merge those in. So if you go ahead and open this up, you won't see a whole lot of difference on this, but you don't have any new optional ESPs. It's basically just, changing some textures and whatnot. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Just be aware that that's what you did. Go ahead and close that. Now that you've got that. Now we come up to Watercolor for E and B and Realistic Water 2. Go ahead and double click to install. You can see Watercolor for E and B and Realistic Water 2. You could rename that if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it because it may be something that you don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and click Manual. And it has a readme.txt. I never need that, but if you want to go ahead and have that and read the instructions for setting your E and B files, I would go ahead and have that. Watercolor for E and B, W.A.T.E.R.esp, looks good. and we're going to activate it, and we're going to move it up. Let's see if it makes any changes. I don't remember if it does or not. Nope, it's just adding a plugin. You come down to your plugins, you can see it right there. It has an enabled master of Realistic Water 2, Skyrim.esm, and Update.esm. We're going to go ahead and start this out by putting this underneath Realistic Water 2 Legendary and see what happens. Yep, didn't move it. So that's probably fine right there. I don't think you need to move it above Legendary. I would keep it in this order. So that's basically the entire install. Obviously, if you're using a non-ENB setup, you don't need the extra ENB instructions for the ENB textures or the ENB Realistic Water 2 for watercolor. So let's just talk about my impressions of Realistic Water 2. When you compare the to water, you can see that they are very, very similar. But the evolution of Realistic Water 2 took different directions, and Isoku made changes that Sparrow Prince didn't. The water is very good. The clarity is not quite as murky as water is. It's probably a little more clear. You can see fish a little more readily. The flow of the water is quite nice, and it makes sense in a lot of areas. When you're looking at streams versus lakes versus rivers, the flow is different, and in the ponds that you can see is much stiller. So, that's a good thing. Waterfalls look much, much better. Streams and little babbling brooks, the foam effect is much more pronounced. The textures are very, very good. The sound is pretty much amazing when you start getting around, different waterfalls and the oceans and the waves and whatnot, much, much louder. So you'll notice that right away when you're walking along. The sound effects for, a lot of waterfalls will almost be deafening. It's so loud. So it's something to keep in mind. As far as the wave effects are very pronounced in certain areas. If you're looking at a wave-to-wave comparison, the waves of the oceans are much larger and louder than water, W.A.T.E.R is. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's a personal choice. There will be different waves for different areas, and that's, of course, talking about the evolution of the two different mods and where they chose to put things. As far as the overall impression, I really like the way Realistic Water 2 looks. Makes sense. It's a nice balance. I think that the waves are probably a bit more pronounced. It may be just a personal choice, and it's something for you to take a look at. As far as if you're an ENB user, this is the preeminent mod to get. It just looks nice, and with an ENB, depending on which one you get, it does look very, very, very good, and I would suggest it wholeheartedly for any ENB users. But even if you don't use an ENB, it looks quite good, and like the other water mods, it's a personal preference. Okay, and the last set of mods we're going to talk about in this video is going to be the Pure Waters, Pure Waterfalls, and the Purity mod. Now, just wait, hear me out. I know Purity is a weather mod, but it has a lot of water components into it, and we'll go into that in turn. But let's talk about Pure Waters and Pure Waterfalls first. And you can see Pure Waters done by Last, L-A-A-S-T, mod number 1111, was originally done in 2011 and is primarily known for being the clearest water you could get. It was very clear, very still. One of the things that you'll notice about it is that it hasn't been updated since 2014. Just keep that in mind. We won't be talking about that, but we'll come back to that in just a second. The second one is Pure Waters Waterfalls, also by Last, mod number 60576, and this is the add-on for Pure Waters that includes really nice waterfalls. And they are very unique and they look very good. I think they look better than any of the other waterfalls we've seen in this video. The only reason why I'm pointing this out is that you can add Pure Waters waterfalls to the other water mods that we have shown here today. So if you like the waterfalls in particular, you can do that. This also has not been updated since 2014. So what you're going to have is a couple older mods. Older ones that, haven't been updated quite as much and may not work as well as they could. And that brings us to Purity. Purity by Last, mod number 65242, is a combination mod where Last put together his weather mod, Pure Weathers, along with Pure Waters and Pure Waterfalls and a bunch of other stuff. And he's been keeping it updated, and it's up to version 1.9. And you can see that was last done in April 9th of 2016. So just, last month or so. So one of the things that, I liked about Purity, the weather mod, and I ran it for a long, long time, is I like the water in it. I like the weather too, but it was the whole package together. And I did cover this in a previous episode and, comparing Purity to Climbs of Tamriel. And I did like Purity a lot. So what does this have to do with water? And I want to go ahead and give a shout out to Thalassa over at the Skyrim Mods Reddit for pointing this out. You can use the water from Purity with other weather mods, namely Vivid Weathers. And of course, you know that we are running Vivid Weathers. So now with all that said, we're going to get into installation of this. So Pure Waters, files on this if you want to get the older version, version 5. You can see, it was done a while ago. Get that with Manager. And if you want to get Pure Water, Waterfalls, go ahead and get that. Version 1.1, download that with Manager. And basically, they're pretty straightforward installs. Right-click, set data directory, install them. And if you want Waterfalls to overwrite the Waterfalls from any other mod, water mods such as Water, W.A.T.E.R, or Realistic Waters 2, go ahead and just place it below it in the priorities and make sure the ESP is after those ESPs for those particular water mods. So, Purity, let's get into this. And this is going to be the only one we're going to get into specific detail on. Like we said in the Weathers video that I had, you can go ahead and download that with Manager, either the Classic, the Realism, whichever darkness version you want. I went ahead and downloaded the new version of the Classic mod, and we'll go take a look at it in Mod Organizer. So here we are in Mod Organizer. You can see I have Pure Waters Legendary Edition. This is the 5.0 version, and you have Pure Waters Waterfalls. I went ahead and tested all these just to make sure no major issues. Installation is very straightforward. You'll figure this out if you've installed other mods using my series before. I used Mod Organizer for a long time. So we're going to talk mainly about Purity and how to go through this. So you can see I have the version 1.9, and over here I have Vivid Weathers, and of course, they're both weather mods. And Thalassa basically said that when you install it, you can just go ahead and right-click, set data directory. You have Purity by Last that goes to a web page, Purity BSA, and Purity ESP. You can go ahead and unpack the BSA if you need to. There's no real issues to worry about. If you don't, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as it is. Click OK. And you can see it's installed there. Now this is the key here. You need to place it above Vivid Weathers. So right click, refresh, and give it a second and it will show the conflicts. Optional ESPs, Purity ESP, conflicts. And you can see the ones that we're mainly concerned with is what's overriding it. And you have Vivid Weathers. And you may be wondering what's going on with Skyrim Floor Overhaul and Enhanced Landscapes. It's basically just one texture. There's going to be other ones that are provided by Purity that'll be overwritten appropriately in the BSA. I don't see any problems with these. You're okay. If you want to unpack it for other reasons, such as later texture mods, you can go ahead and do that. And if I were to use this, I probably would unpack it. But for clarity's sake, we're just going to talk about it. So we can go ahead and close that. And when you come over to your plugins, you can see I have Purity Mod Organizer already put it in its appropriate place. It would be down here. Down at the bottom when you first install it, just make sure it is above Vivid Weathers. And everything works. Everything works very well. We're going to go take a look at it. This has already been loot sorted, so you don't need to worry about this order here. Just make sure that Purity is also above Vivid Weathers in your load order. We're going to take a look at it in TS5 Edit. We're going to select None, and then we're going to go ahead and go down, and we're going to click Purity and Vivid Weathers, and we'll take a look at it. All right, we're all done. So we're going to open up both of these. You can see basically we're going to start with Purity and we'll go to Weather right there. And you can see all of the entries for weather are redded out. If you want to go ahead and check what it looks like, you can see Vivid Weathers is overriding Purity and it makes certain changes. Okay, that's kind of telling you what it needs to know. And then you can go ahead and check something else, overcast snow. You can see what Vivid Weathers is overwriting on that. You can see those right there in the red. And you can just go down through this list. There are certain ones that, if you look, it is unique to Skyrim and Purity, but I wouldn't worry about that too much. It doesn't make that much of a change as far as what Vivid Weathers does, because it overwrites a lot of other things that just replaces these. So I wouldn't worry about too much. Sovngarde Dark is unchanged by Vivid Weathers. Soul Cairn, you wouldn't expect Vivid Weathers to be, worry about that too much. The Eclipse is not changed for Dawnguard. And of course, the Volcanic Ash is not changed by Vivid Weathers, but it is changed by Purity. So you can get the idea of what's going on there. All right, so that's kind of, what we're talking about. The weather portions of Purity are being overwritten by Vivid Weathers. And that's why it works. So I wouldn't worry about, the interaction too much. I did play with it quite a bit. Image spaces, because Vivid Weathers has its own, it's taking precedent over them. So you don't really have to worry about it. So if you really like Purity, I'm just going to go ahead and clean things up a bit. You can set it up this way and go ahead and have the nice weathers from Vivid Weathers along with the very, very clear waters from Purity. So there's that. Now that's installed, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about Purity for a little bit. I ran Purity for a long, long time, and so I was very familiar with the way the water looked. And it was extremely clear. It is still very, very clear. The latest version back in April made some major changes, and it improved the water quite a bit. And one of the things I noticed, it was the texture of the stiller waters. The waterfalls didn't change, but the stiller waters did. In the ponds and slow-moving rivers and lakes, the textures look a lot better than they did before. It has more realism to it. The ocean's very much the same also. It has very good texture, it has more ripples. Before I thought it was way, way too still for being an ocean. It looks much better now. And of course, there is no wave effect in Purity. That is an effect for water, W.A.T.E.R, and realistic water too. So just keep that in mind. You won't see any waves, but you will have very, very clear water. Overall, I like Purity a lot. And if you like the waterfalls, which are, in my opinion, great, great waterfalls, I'm still working on whether I want to run Realistic Water 2 with, realistic water or pure waterfalls. Overall, it looks very, very good. I like Purity a lot, and if you like Purity a lot and you like that really clear water, I think this is a good choice. So you can go ahead and use that special installation and use it without fear if you're using Vivid Weathers. What I don't like about Purity or Pure Waters is that when you use it with an ENB, there has been many reports, and I've seen plenty of footage, of when you run an ENB, sometimes the water is so clear you can't see it. And that's a major issue. So if you're running ENBs, another choice may be better for you. But I still overall like Purity very well. So I'm going to leave you with 4 screenshots in each corner of each of them so you can kind of compare what they all look like. You'll have Vanilla, then you'll have Water, W.A.T.E.R, Realistic Water 2, and Purity. So you can compare them all together and see what they look like. Once again, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoy the series. I know it's been a little irregular. I've been pretty busy with my time. My name's Cal. I'm from Dirty Weasel, and I'm signing off.